All right, guys. Welcome to the Buff Show.
We didn't even do a sound check yet. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Today we got a market update coming your way. So lots of changes. So today is September 16th, and we are reviewing August numbers. And there's a lot going on in the world today. We obviously have elections coming up, a lot of noise around that. Interest rates have been bouncing around like crazy. And in the month of August, we had the new NAR settlement changes happen with the purchase contract. So we're going to kind of go over briefly interest rates and the NAR changes that we've seen because we didn't really know what to expect or how it was going to play out.
Yeah, they waited to the last second to really tell us how they wanted us to mitigate and move forward.
Yeah. Well, and still there's a lot of gray areas
Yes,
still. But the biggest things on the NAR settlement is if I'm working with a buyer, I have to have a signed buyer broker agreement with a set commission amount with that buyer prior to showing them houses.
Correct. In the area or house specific, it has to be set before you can even go in or ask for a showing.
How are you handling that with buyers?
It's pretty blunt about it. Just say, hey, legally, if in order to show you the house, we have to sign this paperwork. And if they don't, then I just tell them I'm sorry. You know, that's how strict it is. It has to be done legally. So,
and how I've been saying it too is like, hey, I work for 3%. Do you allow me to negotiate this into the deal with the seller? Because the next thing that's really changed is in the purchase contract, it's 4.2E talks about real estate brokerage compensation. And right in the purchase contract, you put in the amount that the buyer broker is going to be paid from the seller, basically. Yep. So, I mean, it's still very similar to how we operated in the past. The biggest changes is instead, I used to do a lot of the buyer broker agreements, like when we would draft the paperwork, and then we put that all into place there. Now we're doing it before we show them houses. And then you used to, as sellers, the buyer agent compensation would be shown on the MLS, whatever the percentage was. Now that is completely gone. And buyer agents get that info from the listing agents by phone, calling them on their personal real estate websites or like a text message.
And honestly, that's not even a really a set way too, because some agents won't tell you. And I think I'm going to be one of those agents. I want them to negotiate their buyer's agent commission with the offer, right?
Yeah.
But keep in mind, you don't ever want to offer a zero.
Right.
Because you're still trying to lure and help buyers come to your house. So,
so
there's a fine line in negotiation and how to figure out how to do it.
And I can't say we have this dialed in perfectly because I've handled it a few ways. And I've had like 4 or 6 listings in the past 30 days go live. And we've done it a number of different ways. Some sellers were like, hey, I just want to offer 3% and offer that amount. And hopefully that attracts more buyers to us. So anytime there's showings, we'll let agents know, hey, by the way, seller's offering 3% here. But we have to reach out to them and let them know.
So your listing agent, even though we cannot put it on the MLS anymore, what you're willing to offer, but your listing agent can publicly market other ways through their website. When they can call other agents, they can do all different things. You can actually, and this is one of the gray areas that they haven't set a rule on yet, but we can send flyers out to the neighborhood and say, hey, look at this great house. We're offering a 3% BAC.
Yeah. Well, and on our websites and once showings are scheduled, we can just message those agents. Hey, love to work with you here. Sellers will pay X. But it's funny because me as the buyer's agent, I don't necessarily have time to talk to all the agents. What are you offering? Like, I'm just going to go show my clients whatever houses they want to see.
Yep.
And then
the ones they like, that's when you have to figure out.
Well, the ones they like, I'm just going to put it in the contract.
Exactly.
And then we'll negotiate it from there. Because depending on the offer, the price, the terms and everything like that will determine like how we piece it together. And so, like you said, with some sellers, you're like, hey, are you offering a buyer agent commission? Yes. How much? It depends on the offer.
Well, let me tell you what I've done just on this Friday.
Okay.
We had 2 townhomes we're offering on. We were wanting, they were really close, same area. The agent sent over, after talking with each of them, getting details, he sent over, hey, by the way, we really love a buyer, 2%, 2.5% BAC. showed it to my clients. They're like, awesome, they're paying for that. I'm like, cool. So we put in the contract. We still wanted 3%.
Yeah.
They took it to their clients, and guess what? They were okay with the 3%. So I was actually able to help my clients out with some other costs that they weren't able to afford.
Yeah.
Because we put it in the contract.
Yeah.
Not every agent's going to do that, but just the magic of being able to, now I can actually negotiate that.
Yeah.
I actually, in that sense, I think it's better, because before it was what was on there was what was on there, and it was almost taboo to try to ask for
more.
better compensation.
Yeah, and I think most sellers are more than open to negotiating with buyer agents. We just had an offer roll in on a listing that we just listed, and we've had a ton of showings, potential multiple offers, and this one came in above asking. And like, of course, like if it's above asking, the seller's more than likely like, hey, 3%'s great, like, right? So it just depends. But so be aware of those. If you're a buyer or seller, if you want to work with us and see houses, we're going to have to get this set into stone prior. We will work with you, however, and we've done this enough times. We can get our fees negotiated into the deal and still get you a great deal. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Right.
And then on the seller side, obviously we're trying to save you as much cost as possible, but we don't want to undercut buyer's agents, because like a lot of times I would rather work with a good buyer's agent than just a self-represented buyer's agent that doesn't know what they're doing.
Because 90% of the time, those don't get across the finish line.
Right. Because
they'll get to a sticky point. They'll get to where they just don't know. And instead of asking, they almost just disappear into the void.
Yeah. So while there's been a lot of changes, it's really just a change in procedure and how we're operating.
Right.
Not, sellers aren't paying buyer agent commissions anymore.
It honestly is exactly the same way it was, minus steps.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still doing the same paperwork.
Yeah.
We got a couple extra lines on a contract that we're able to use. And the only thing we're not seeing is a BAC listed on the MLS.
Right.
So, and I will say to, my buyers out there, if you're working with an agent, and if it's not me, then I hate you. But be cautious. Sit down and ask them what it means. And if they can't explain it to you, then they're not doing their job.
Right.
It's not that scary.
Right.
So it's not a big deal to sign paperwork before you see a house.
Yeah.
But test your agent. Talk to them.
Yeah. And realize that our number one goal is to get you into a house. Obviously, we want to get paid. And if it gets into this sticky situation, like, we will work with you on what we need to do to get you into that house. So with all that being said, those are the changes with NAR and the contracts. If you're a seller client and we're working with you currently, hopefully that gives you an update and kind of an overview there. Mortgage rates, what have those been doing?
So they've been bouncing high 5s to low 6s.
Yeah.
And it's
which is
daily.
Incredible.
Yep.
It's so cool. Like that is huge right now. I'm especially excited because I'm in the process of buying a house, and I'm like, yeah, bring
But
them
you're
down.
using all cash though, right? It was like a $4 million house, all cash.
I wish. Yeah, that's not true. But no, we're currently got the mortgage application all in. Everything we just got out of underwriting and it's looking good. And we're just waiting to see when we want to lock in. So we're still over 30 days from closing, and I guess rates, you'll get a better rate if you're within that 30-day window.
If you lock within a 30-day, anything farther out, it's either more expensive to lock.
Yeah.
So you want to try to get a little bit closer in.
And I'm hopeful that I think rates may continue to go down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's all a guess, but everybody that I've talked to, lenders, are all excited for the upcoming months and even a year out.
Yeah.
I've had lenders advise some of my clients to maybe hold on to their cash and go in as cash light as they can on the deal and wait for a refi in the next 4 to 6 to a year, trying to get out and redo their loan. So when you start hearing that, you start getting like a breath of warm air.
Right.
For buyers. I think, everything ebbs and flows. So
yeah. So
good with the bad.
It's good news if you're like for buyers, obviously that means, hey, cheaper mortgage payments, which you'd be surprised even what 1/4 to 0.5% will do to your payment. It's huge. And then for sellers, this is only going to increase the demand as it pushes new buyers out into the market. It's happening at a weird time though, because it is an election year. And how many times a week do you get, well, Ben, I think I'm just going to wait and see how the election plays out.
And I have the quickest response for that, and it's same thing. Sure, you can wait or you can buy now, and then no matter what the election does, if the rates go down, prices are going to go up.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and I think right now, like me personally, like I said, I'm in the middle of buying a house, and I'm actually secretly really excited about it because there's a surplus of inventory, and sellers are pretty negotiable right now.
100%.
And rates are coming down. So I'm like, this is kind of like the perfect storm because it would not surprise me if next spring, over elections and winter time, prices or interest rates soften.
Mm-hmm.
And then next spring could just be a flood of new buyers like, holy cow, rates are here. We got this president, this and that. And there's no more unknowns, right?
And you know, one of the big things I just ran into, and I was working it out with a client, we're going through the emotions, and it was, I mean, we were tripping over like $100 a month, right?
Yeah.
Which is a lot, and it isn't all in the same breath. But I made the comment, we'll call him Joe Blow Schmo is who we're doing this deal for. And right now, yeah, we maybe not beating them up and getting them to drop the whole price down, but we're getting like $12,000 seller paid financing.
Yeah.
Do you think a seller's willing?
Cost?
Yeah, or closing cost. Do you think a seller's going to be willing to give that to you when there's 3 offers on the table?
No.
Right. So even if that price doesn't change from now till then, there's other malleable things that are happening with these sellers.
Yeah.
They're wanting their properties to move.
Yeah. It's interesting because like in the past, you used to could not get that much in closing costs.
It's crazy. And
now, like I have 2 offers out there right now, one with like 12 or 13,000 seller paid closing costs, another one with $25,000 seller paid closing costs. Even ours, I think we're at 20,000 seller paid closing costs, which is sweet because like it's a large loan and that really, we're not buying down a rate, but it's just covering all those expenses when it comes to getting the loan. So,
and that's a hard pitch point with people, cash out of their pocket to get the loan done.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. Cause we're trying to put 20% down so that we're not paying
PMI and a few other things on your mortgage.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, right now sellers are malleable.
Yeah. Okay. So just going over some of the monthly indicators for August. So days on market, this is a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about. Days on market increased 10.6% to 52 days on market, which is a considerable amount of like, that's what we're saying. Like we're seeing the market just kind of stall out and sellers are having to wait longer and longer and longer for their houses to sell. And people are impatient. And when they get impatient, they start throwing money away, which is great for you buyers. And the months of supply of inventory is up 8.1% to 4 months, which is a big number that I've kind of been making bets on for the past 2 podcasts.
He finally would have won.
Yeah, I'm just 2 months late, but it's going in the direction that I thought. So should we jump in with new listings?
Yeah, jump in. You got new listings.
Okay, so new listings is basically flatlined for the month of August compared to last August. So we're not going to go into more there.
Pretty even. And you're going to see a lot of that in a stagnant market.
Yeah.
All right. Pending sales, we're actually down 4.3%. We had 3,476 last August. And this August, we had 3,327. So roughly 120 less. So that one's pending. Yep. And these aren't, I mean, those seem like big numbers, but that's still a pretty flat line from last year.
Yeah. Yeah. And closed sales, when we look at closed sales,
almost
it's the same, negative 4.2%. So a little less pending, a little less close, which again, that to me just indicates more of this flatlining market. And then we'll see how that affects like the actual like days on market and stuff like that.
So days on market, this is that big one we were talking about. We are up 10%. So 47 days from August last year to 52 days on market this year. And mind you, that's days on market until a sell. That's not until you close. That's until you get an accepted contract. So you're another 30 to 45 days after that.
It's wild.
So if you want to sell a house right now, how long do you need?
52 days.
That's
well, yeah, until you get an offer, and then you're another 30 days or so for a contract, so 30 to 45.
80 to 90 days to get your money.
Which is a big point that I want to bring out because, and I'm going to look this up.
You cheating right now?
No. How many days are left until the end of the year? 109 days remaining in this year. So like if you want to be into a house starting today by Christmas, like you are you're really pushing it if you're a seller, right?
Let's break that down. So buyers, you got 30 to 45 days if you're buying a house, if you have clean, don't have to sell or anything.
Right.
If you're a seller and you got to get out of your house to get into a house, we're what, 52 days now?
Plus 30.
Plus 30. So you're 80 days on the quick.
80 to 90 days. So if you wanted to have your house sold by Christmas, you're really pushing it right now. And that's not even considering, well, that's if you are ready to list it today. Most people are going to need a couple of weeks to get it ready for photos. And then if you're a buyer, most people are going to need some time to get pre-approved, to get all their ducks in a row. So we're really hitting that crunch time. If you want to make something happen by the end of the year, now is the time. Yeah. And again, I'm going to go back to, like, even me personally, I'm in the market, I'm buying something, and I think this is a great time to try and buy. I think we'll look back and be like, man, sellers were more workable, rates were coming down, and it's kind of this perfect storm. I have like hopeful expectations for this next spring, especially after elections. There's not that uncertainty there. And if rates continue to kind of soften, I think next spring after the snow melts, we'll have a lot of buyers that are like, I think this is the year, let's do it,
Right.
And then that's just going to fuel the prices. So big stuff happening. So looking back at median sales price, only up 2.4%. We're at an average or a median price of $502,000, up from $490,000.
Okay, average. It's kind of the same idea, but we're taking in all of them, dividing them by the total houses that sold, and we're up about 2.3%, and we're sitting at 650,475, and from last year at 635. So
pretty flat
still. I mean, but we are seeing we're still ticking upward.
Yeah,
I mean, we are at price wise at the top of the crazed market, the back and
close to not quite.
Well,
a little bit off, because I think it was 2022. We don't have those numbers yet, but if you look at the line graph, like it was like spring of 2022 was kind of the peak for the average. We're probably 25 grand below it still.
Yeah.
But
okay, I guess. Sorry,
not far off. So if we look at percentage of original list price received, so on average for the whole state, sellers are getting on average 96.6% of their list price. And this, keep in mind, because we were just talking about some pretty hefty concessions, seller paid concessions. This does not include seller paid concessions. So if we were to add those in there, I'll bet really we're probably another 3% lower.
Yeah, 93, 92.
Yeah.
I was actually just thinking that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it goes to show as a buyer, like you're just off of the price, you're able to get 3.4% off.
Yeah.
And if you were to take in, some concessions, you're probably closer to 6 to 7% off.
Which is huge in a large transaction like that.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Housing affordability index. I'm not going to get in the nitty gritty, but basically it takes how much the average household income is to how much the average home costs and tells you how affordable it is. So we're sitting at a 77, and at 100, that means it's affordable. 70, anything below that is less affordable. Anything above that, you have surplus money to buy things.
But it's funny because like last year we were 74, so we're up to 77. So, and I think it's only because of interest rates have softened, we're seeing it become more affordable.
Right.
Whereas in May and April, we were like a 72. October of 2023 was a 71. So that's kind of the lowest we've seen it, is in the low 70s. But we're actually like kind of pulling out, which it's only a matter of time. Like we're talking before the supply or the demand catches up to this affordability, right? And pushes it back down.
So here's my other thing I want to point out when we say the housing affordability. That is only taking in the metrics of income to house price.
And interest rates.
Yeah. We're not taking in groceries and gas and
right.
So if you hear this and go, BS, it ain't affordable. We're only just looking at money, interest. Yeah. So if you didn't have to eat or get gas.
Yeah.
It doesn't take into a lot of different things that inflation and stuff would cause. Right?
Yeah.
Is there a study out there? We should pull that in.
We could. And I was having a talk with somebody just the other day, and they're like, man, like prices are just so crazy and astronomical right now. And I think that's kind of been I've heard that.
For 3 years?
No,
4 years?
well, even before that, like when I bought my very first house, like almost 12 years ago, it was the same thing. Like my dad was like, "You're spending how much on the house?" And my grandpa was like, "You're spending how much on the house?"
Yeah.
And they were coming from like their first house was 14,000 to mine was 180. And now I look back and I'm like, 180 was a sweet deal.
I would about 10.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the time it still felt like it was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And one conversation I had over this weekend was like, man, like prices just need to come back. And I'm like, it'd be nice if they would, but they're probably not, because we had the government right after COVID dump
Trillions.
Was it trillion?
Trillions.
Billions or trillions,
Trillions.
back into the economy. Every American was getting money in their bank accounts just uploaded. And like when you do that, it affects the money supply greatly, right?
Mhm.
We're not going to go back to where, eggs and groceries and everything are going to be cheaper. Like it's just not going to happen. There's too much more money in the market now that's not going away.
Right.
So that's inflation. That's what happens when we get free money.
Free money.
No such thing as it, right?
Yep.
Okay, so inventory of homes for sale, number of properties available for sale in active status at the end of a given month. So August of last year, we were 11,583. We jumped up 15% to 13,324 homes active on the market, which is crazy. I remember in 2021 when we were, I want to say like 5,000 or 6,000 homes on the market. So like almost a third of where we're at now.
What I just want to point out to this, like we're saying, oh man, the inventory is getting up. There's houses for sale everywhere.
Yeah.
Look back in
2008, 2009.
2006 to 2015.
Yeah.
I mean,
you were on average like 20 to 25,000.
Were sellers just dying on the inside back then?
Yeah, well, days on market were like 6 months back then. So that was like the true definition of a buyer's market was back then. I mean, still today
we lived through it, but we didn't work through that.
No. Well, and that's the next one that we're going to talk about is the month supply of inventory. So basically, if you didn't get any new homes listed in a month, how many months would it take you to run out of inventory? And on our current pace, it would take us 4 months to run out. So in the past, we've been in the 1s, 2s, 3s, and now we're up to 4 months supply of inventory, which is up 8% from last year.
We haven't seen that since end of 2015. If you look at that line graph.
Yeah.
We haven't had 4 months of inventory on the market since end of 2015.
Which
that's insane.
Is crazy.
Which is still fairly quick. I mean, that's not huge still in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, we're still in a seller's market, I would say.
Yeah.
It just feels more like a buyer's market because we're used to a faster seller's market, right?
Exactly.
But it feels great if you're a buyer now because you still have some good options to look at, right?
Right. It's not just buy the first thing that comes up or the first person will take an offer that you're throwing out there.
And I'm feeling this, like we had our house listed in Eden and like a few years ago, it would have been gone in 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like just sitting. And so we're like, hey, actually, I think we'll rent this out, which is going to be a better plan for us. But the inventory is really messing with prices, how fast things are selling. And we're going to jump into Morgan and Ogden Valley actually now to give a more
detailed in our micro markets.
Yeah.
And one thing I do want to touch before we jump into these is I think that is going to be our job as agents. One, we have to do it for ourselves first and then for our book clients. Like we've got to rewire our mindsets on how we sell a house and how long it takes and the reality of it. Because how often do you have a house that's listed and it hits a 30-day mark and you're just like sweating when in reality, 3, 4, 5 months is what it should take.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's going to be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of sellers. And I think sellers getting ready to sell need to realize we're not in that quick, give it to me now market. And that's going to be hard.
And when you're pricing a house in a flat market, even if you price it at market value, it can be a struggle because we don't know if the market's going up or down or really where it's going. So if you can be competitive based on the active inventory in the area.
Yep.
And if there's a lot of active inventory at that market value price, you might need to be a little bit under, which feels weird for a seller, but you have to factor in what are your holding costs, how long is it going to take you to
Yep.
sell, and where's the market going? Like,
What's your
'cause
motivation?
I can tell you the next 3 to 4 months, actually probably the next 6 months are going to be pretty slow for sellers as we head into winter.
Yeah.
It's not going to start picking up big until March of next year.
Okay.
We're just on this downward trend. I would say
Okay.
if I was a seller, you got how many buyers are wanting to move in the middle of winter? Not very many.
You're right. Well,
So-
and I don't know. I would say it is this winter, this holiday season, I think is going to depend like 90% of it on if these rates do something drastic in the next month or two. And by drastic, I mean even a 0.25%.
but
I think you're going to see.
we're seeing that right now though, and I just don't have buyers beating down the door.
I
Like
do.
Yeah.
That's all I have, and all you have is listings. But
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's weird. It's hard to.
Yeah. I mean, I think buyers should be like really jumping on the bandwagon because I think next spring, I don't have very many buyers that are like, hey, I want to move my kids during Christmas
School, yeah.
and like I want to load up all my stuff in the middle of the snow and pack it to a new house. Like there's just a lot less people wanting to do that. And we are already September 16th. So we're into snow in like 2 months, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. Should we jump into more?
I was going to say, let's do a bet one of these days, but I don't know what to bet on. Okay. These are our little micro markets. We're going to talk Morgan County. So new listings from 2023 to 2024, we jumped up 4 listings, 22 per month. And mind you, Morgan's a really small market. We don't ever have a whole lot going on sales wise. Pending sales, 10 last year, 12 this year. So only 2 more. Closed sales, exactly the same. We closed 16 and 16. The median sales price went up 7.5% from $632,000 to $680,000. So that was a fairly decent jump right there. The average sales price went from $825,000 to $830,000. Now these numbers seem skewed, remember, because we have a small market, so if $1 million house sells and then 2 $400,000 house sells, it skews pretty quick.
Yeah.
Percent of original list price received. And I love this because I love working with a buyer's agent or a buyer too. 95% in 2023 and 94% in 2024. So buyers are able to win some battles. How about that? Days on market have gone up about, let's see, that's 7 days extra from 37 days to 44 days. Inventory of homes for sale. We went for 39 homes in 2023 to 51. But that's actually a huge jump for Morgan.
Yeah.
And Morgan and these smaller markets fill these slow times a lot harder, in my opinion, because they're usually more expensive and they don't have more of that consumer, that young consumer, that quick, like a quick young first time home buyer price points.
Yeah.
They're usually a little bit nicer, more expensive homes, more expensive areas. So
right.
to have that many houses on the market's a lot.
Right.
That's 51 for 2024.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
And then month supply has stayed fairly flat, 4.8 months to 4.5 months, which is funny. There was actually less homes on the market last year in August, but a longer month supply of inventory based on how fast homes are moving. And we have about the exact same month supply of inventory, but we have 30% more houses on the market.
Yeah, that's
saying that houses are moving a little faster. We just have a lot more right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
That was a quick Morgan snippet.
Morgan's interesting just because there's not a lot of data points. So we see the numbers vary a ton. Like I think last month it was like negative 12% on the median sales price. Like it looked like numbers dropped a ton, but it was just like, okay, well, was that just like a lack in data points,
Right. Well, and here's another topic I want to put on Morgan. We talk about, you got to price with your market, right?
Yeah.
And what's right around you. Morgan is what I've seen the last little bit, neighbors fighting neighbors on sales, right? Because the house isn't at a certain price point. The house isn't what people are looking for in Morgan. They're looking to get into Morgan and they're looking for a decent lot yard. So you'll have these houses that, one looks like a 1901 cabin that was built by 19 different people, and the other one was built in early 2000s, and they're the exact same price.
Right.
And if one lists just a touch below it, whether it's newer or nicer, they're moving. So they're almost price battling each other.
Right.
on
Yeah.
your neighbors.
Well, and that's where like looking at your active and under contract competition, because even comps, you're like, well, that they went 3-year journey like 3-4 months ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the price they got. But where's the market now? And
Right.
and realizing and figuring out that data is important as well. So Ogden Valley, we're just going to cover Eden, Huntsville, and Liberty. August of 2023, 16 homes sold. Average sold to original list price received 94%. Average days on market was 83. In August of 2024, we had 22 sales, so quite a bit more. Average sold to list price 91%. So in Ogden Valley, sellers are negotiating on average 9% of list price, not including seller paid concessions, which is a
Wow.
lot. It's a lot. Like we're talking like almost 10% or over 10% with seller paid concessions. And then our average days on market, 92 days on market.
Wow.
That's why I'm like, I'm just going to rent my house because now is not a, like as far as trying to maximize your sales price in Ogden Valley, there's a surplus of listings. There's a lot of inventory and it's a little bit crazy. Good news is in like the 10-year overlook in 2034 or 2035, Olympics are coming to Utah, right? And that's going to be 2034. That's going to be a big boost in our economy. And I think it'll help house prices in some of these areas and get a lot of lookers and eyeballs on our areas. And then not to mention the ski resorts and all the just the communities that have to build up the infrastructure for that demand of people is going to boost it. So
I'm excited to see what actually comes of that.
Yeah.
In the 2 to 3 years leading up to it, how crazy it is going to get.
Right. So I think we've covered everything we wanted to here. Lots of big things happening. Biggest thing I want to kind of end with is if your goal is to make a move by the end of the year, get with us now. Like now is the time to make something happen. And I think it's a great time overall. And I think depending on how elections go, like this next year could look a lot more optimistic. Rates seem to be coming down. I'm excited. I just overall, I think I'm optimistic for the outlook over the next year or so. Would you agree?
I agree. And I'm going to go back. The only thing that a guy can guarantee in this market is time in the market.
Yeah.
You know, no one has a crystal ball on rates, how fast they're going to move. But I always tell my clients, I guarantee the longer you're in the market, the happier you're going to be.
Right.
So
Yeah.
even if it was a bad time when you got in, the longer you're in it, you're happier you're going to be with your investments.
And like I ask people sometimes, like, hey, if I would have told you bought 3 houses back in 2008, how pissed do you think you would be? And that just depends on if you were able to hold on to them, because the median sales price back in 2008 for Utah was like 200 to 225.
And now it's 500 and something.
Now it's 502,000. So it's gone up 300 grand in a 16-year span ish,
Right.
So,
which and not to pick on age and different things like that, but we're finally getting to an age where we can't go, oh, we'll do it later.
right.
I mean, we're mid 30s. 16 years, we're going to be 55-ish.
Yeah.
It's in my opinion, it's not too late, but it's too late to get in without being super cash heavy at that point.
Well, and with how rampant inflation is right now and how freely the government spends, like the best thing to do is to get something fixed, like a house price.
Right.
And then because you're watching your inflation increase on your principal and the debt that you have from the mortgage, right? So
exactly.
So if inflation, I don't even know what it is right now. Do you know?
I can't even follow it anymore.
Yeah.
And it depends on what news station you're on.
Right.
And yeah.
But we'll say, I mean, I think in previous years it was like an average 2 to 3% a year. But say we're at like 5 or 6%.
I mean, 5 or 6 is the last ones I was talking about.
So if that's the case, like technically the interest that you're paying on your house is almost like a wash because of inflation. Like if you hang on to that house long enough, inflation will just catch up, right? So
I don't give legal advice, tax advice, or investing advice, but in my opinion, the best way to beat inflation is with debt. It's with debt, right?
Smart debt, yeah.
Yeah, smart debt. If you like you said, you lock in these rates at a certain point, even Because inflation, even if it comes down, we're coming down from a new set point.
Yeah.
It's always going up. We just want it to go up slower, right?
Well, and anytime you can hang on to a property and keep it and rent it, like, and as long as you have that outlook of another 10 years, like, I would love to see all our rental properties double in value the next 10 years, like they have in the past, right?
I would love to be able to question and grill my grandkids and why the hell they're paying that much for a house.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I can't wait for that day to be like, oh, when I was a kid and I bought my first. Well, we've already done it a little bit, but yeah.
I was listening to a podcast. It was on the Founders podcast, and this guy was talking, and he's like even back in the early 1900s, the Great Depression, there was people saying like, there's no way we're pulling out of this, you know, oil prices and this and that. And it was always doom and gloom. Like, there's no way this is going to happen. And then just, we're innovative. Like, things just keep going. Right.
Right.
So it really just like, if anything's better than paying rent, in my opinion.
Yes.
So if you can figure out how to get in, it wasn't easy for me to get in the market when I first got home from my mission.
Even right now.
Right. Well, it's not easy now. Like, it's just never that easy, but it's really not that complicated if you can like kind of create a plan and a vision around it, and then find the team to help you execute it.
Yep.
And yeah, you might have to budget for a few years, right? I remember working like framing, making $11 an hour and not going out to dinner with the guys eating my bologna sandwiches because I didn't want to waste money because I didn't have that much money to spend. And it was like $11 an hour. And then I look at my brother and he's making way more than that, you know? And prices have, yes, come up, but it's just like where there's a will, there's a way, and you can figure it out if you have the desire.
You don't sell to many buyers right now, you know, so I have the inside scoop. But that's one of my hardest things. Given you can't have your cake and eat it too, talk.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people that are super intelligent and smart, and they're wanting to, you know, they're in that next stage of life where they want to buy an investment or do something like that. And then we get right down to it, and they can do it, and they'll actually have surplus money, but they go, it won't pay for itself. And I'm like, well, yeah, it probably won't. Or you have to put more money down. And it's, I don't want to put more cash in. Well, it's like, okay, look, if this was that easy that you just signed up and somebody rented a house and paid for your mortgage, everybody would do it. Right.
Yeah.
That's such a hard thing to get across to some buyers.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But the reward is worth it.
Yeah.
If you, like you said, if you can actually make a goal and a plan and you know what you're working toward, then it's easier to sacrifice that little bit.
Yeah.
But if you're just hoping to be rich and be an investor, it's not going to work. You have to have a plan.
It's a 10, 15 year, 20-year plan
or more,
right? Yeah. And our properties, I'm just like, I'm going to keep hanging on to them, you know? So, and I remember when you were buying all yours, it was like every other year, Ben was like, I think I'm going to sell. And I'm like, I think you'll regret selling. He really
wasn't that nice. He wasn't that nice.
And Ben rarely calls like saying, I think I'm going to sell, because in my mind, it's hard to get the properties, and it's easier to just keep them and like keep the systems you have in place, just running them, and then just focus on like, okay, how do I make more money and buy more properties? And I think my strategy will change here in the next few years, where I need to reset some of these cost segs and tax things, but it'll be sell this 1031 into something else and reset it.
I'm glad you brought that stuff up. Older investors and more seasoned investors, please listen to that kind of stuff. Younger investors, you hear tax 30 or 1031s, you hear tax depreciation, you hear all these different things you can do with the rentals. Don't stress about that stuff right now.
Right.
Get into one or two, talk to your accountant, then do that stuff. I have so many people that are so worried about starting a corporation and trying to screw the government before they even got pre-approved, right?
Right.
And I'm like, that is like, I'm not seasoned. I'm a little bit behind you in the investment game, and I'm just barely starting to dip into needing to utilize some of these rules.
Yeah.
So don't bog yourself down with there's a whole other companies and professionals that we even call when you start getting into this stuff.
Yeah.
Don't bog yourself down trying to stick it to the man or be like an Instagram influencer, and it's down the road a ways.
And it's not as fancy and like glamorous as everybody makes it out to be.
It's paperwork.
It's just paperwork, and it's a grind, and it sucks.
Yeah.
But then there's days that you just like wake up one morning and you're like, wow,
I'm glad I freaking did that.
yeah. And you're like, I'm glad like I made those sacrifices, but it's make them now or like sacrifice later. And I have yet to see a return like real estate rental properties. And I know this isn't a rental podcast or episode that we're doing, but that my rental properties have brought in. Like I've only sold two properties actually now. We sold that one in Bear Lake that was just not a great Airbnb.
Yeah, but that you were cutting the debt on that.
Yeah, I was cutting the debt. But so I've sold two, but we've kept all the other ones. And it's just been cool to see like it evolve. And I always thought we would sell our Eden house because I'm like, it's too nice. There's too much equity there. But like actually running the numbers now, I'm like, hey, this is another wheel in the cog that can really start making money down the road, right? If I hang on to that 10 years, I'll be like doubling my investment. And I don't know what I could do by selling it where I would
the next play is not there, so it's hard.
Yeah. So as you can see, we're passionate about real estate, whether you're looking just to get into your dream house or invest or relocate here from another area. We got you covered, and we know this area, we know the market, we know the trends, what's going on, and
we have the teams to get it done. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, we really do. So anyways, hope you enjoyed this episode. Till next month.
See you later.
Guys.